The Primary Arms SLX 3X MicroPrism is the last MicroPrism in the SLX family for me to review. I've already done extensive reviews on both the 1X and the 5X, as well as its cousin, the GLX 2X. If you're watching this video and you don't know which one to get, do not worry, I plan on putting a buyer's guide out there after this video. But if you're looking to find out right now, well then stay tuned because we're about to get this ball rolling. I will be doing some comparisons towards the end, but it'll be with other options in the 3X-ish sort of category. Before we get into that though, let's go over the physical features of this thing first. I've already gone fairly in depth with both the 1X and the 5X, so as far as the 3X here, I'm not going to go too crazy. What you get in the box is identical across the board. You get a plethora of different mounts as well as the optic itself. If you do not like the mounts that this thing or the 1X or the 5X or even the GLX 2X actually, now that I think about it, if you don't like the mounts that come with it, guess what? You can get whatever mount you would like for a mini ACOG. They use the exact same footprint, which was genius thinking on Primary Arms' standpoint, because why the hell not? There's tons of manufacturers out there that offer different mounts of every shape, style, color, everything you can possibly imagine. A real quick comparison between these two, the 3X and the 5X are fairly similarly sized, but again, there will be a full buyer's guide for this thing coming out in the near future. Again, if you'd like to find a more in-depth unboxing of the SLX series, please check out my 1X video, which will be linked probably in the description below. As far as what you could expect from this thing from an external standpoint, it is wonderfully made. These things really do feel fantastic. There's no other word for it. And they have a really nice organic look to it. They have these nice sweeping lines. They're not really like hard-edged and cheap like their old Gen 1 series of prisms. The illumination on the side is controlled via a rotary dial. These do have auto on or auto off. I think they call it auto live. It's specific to Primary Arms, not to be confused with Shake Awake, which will probably be infringement on some sort of patent for other manufacturers. As far as the action to the dial itself, it's pretty good. In the 1X, it seemed a little bit sloppy, but in this one, they seem to have tightened it up and worked it a little bit. It could just be me, but it does feel a little bit better to my hand. There is only one off position. There are two night vision settings, and there's a bunch of different brightness settings, which do get truly daytime bright. You could see right there that the cap for the battery compartment is the same size as the actual dial itself. So if you're not careful and you're constantly turning this thing counterclockwise, you could absolutely, potentially loosen the cap and shut your illumination off. Ask me how I know. Once you open up the battery compartment, you'll see we have a very standard compartment inside, standard CR2032 battery, and it works perfectly fine. If you are worried about having the battery compartment cover come loose, just pinch it like how I'm doing it, take a coin, and really crank down on it. They claim about 30 to 50,000 hours of the battery life depending on your brightness setting with Auto Live, so guess what? You probably shouldn't have to replace the battery all that much anyway. As far as the weight, the 3X slots itself right in between the 1X and the 5X, about 8.5 ounces, but again, that's going to vary depending on your mount setup. Touching back on the turrets real quickly, I'll let you listen to the original audio.
Very strong and pronounced detent. You could turn it with a coin as you see here, or with a shell casing on that small one right there. Each click is 1/4 MOA, which is perfectly sufficient. Sound and feel sensational.
The turrets on these things are phenomenal. They sound and feel great, do not bump out of zero, at least in my findings, and these things actually track pretty well as well. As well? Yeah, as well. Before I forget to mention it again, the fast focus eyepiece on the back feels really good. It's got very fine threads, but it's nice and tight, and it does not wiggle all that much. Again, your mileage may vary, but it does feel really good, and that's across the board with the 1X and the 5X as well. The 2X did seem like it had a little bit more play, but honestly, it's well within the reason of acceptable. If you're familiar with ACOGs, they don't have fast focus eyepieces, so you might be asking yourself, why have it on these? It's just another means for water to get inside, and you would be correct. However, let's say you have really bad vision, or you have a bad astigmatism, and red dots or holographic sights don't work for your eye. I'd recommend a prism, especially if you want that little extra magnification to identify targets downrange. We're going to touch on that more later on. But just know that you can get this thing really sharp to your eye, both image, reticle, and overall illumination brightness. So if you're worried about that for yourself, then I think you're already on the right path of finding what's going to work out for you. There really isn't a whole lot to say other than you can get these things in black, FDE, with green or red illumination, and a bunch of different reticle options. These things really do come however you would like. And for the price, I think you're getting a lot. But let me stop telling you about it and let me start showing you about it. This one is spec'd out with the Raptor ACSS in 223 or 308. You can get this again in a bunch of different reticles, but that is what this 3x MicroPrism is set for. As far as what I think about this reticle, I think it's more than sufficient. The donut really helps draw your eye right to the center. You can see exactly what's going on, and the spacings are well enough that you could actually still see them with the 3x magnification that we have. As far as the illumination on these things, both the red and green are truly daytime bright, and the spacing between all of the levels is quite nice. You could really fine tune it if you need to. I have yet to really test these out under my PVS 14, but that might change one of these days. As far as where the emitter is, you can see it's in the top left because it's brighter in that spot, and then it fills out the rest of the reticle. But that is not a nitpick, that is just something to point out. If you watched my TA33 ACOG video, I highly suggest you watch that, at least the tracking segment, because I had nothing but problems with that thing, to the point that I actually contacted Trijicon to try to send it in to get repaired. I did send it in. They had it for about a month, said, oh yes, there is a problem, and then said, oh no, it's your mount because it's not a factory mount. Here you go, and send it back to me. So I was just brutally honest with that in my review of that. As far as tracking on this, it tracks perfectly fine. There is a little bit of slop in the erector for the windage, like 1 or 2 clicks, really not that bad. As far as if it tracks in a straight line, it was as near as makes no difference, indiscernible from my perspective here at 41 yards on my tracking test. It's more than sufficient and better than an ACOG, or at least the TA33 that I had reviewed. So know that if you do have to make an adjustment on this, it shouldn't give you that much of an issue. Finally getting the chance to really look through this SLX 3X, and what do we really notice? Well, the first thing you might notice is that here, fully zoomed out, basically as close of a representation of what this thing is going to look like when you actually get behind it as far as sizing goes. It looks really, really good. Part of that has to do with the overall field of view. Primary Arms claims that this thing has a field of view of about 38 feet at 100 yards, which is actually pretty sizable. If you were to compare that against the TA33, the Trijicon that we just looked at, that had 19.4 feet, almost half of what this thing has. It wasn't the brightest or the sunniest day out there, but on full brightness, the illumination is quite wonderful. You don't need this thing to be nuclear bright like the Nova, because I think it would just do more disservice than good. I didn't mean to offend any Nova owners, but the Nova does get too bright to the point where you can't use it at max brightness. It almost sort of defeats the purpose. Again, having a wonderful wretched Reticle like this, where you can pick it up in most instances or in most situations, illumination is really a secondary means of using it. The first is going to be using the reticle. In fact, most optics that are magnified should be worked and used like that. Cropping it to a standard 2x crop, everything from that 30-yard white rooftop right in front of us to the 400-yard brick building to the 900-yard power towers out in the distance look really good. There was a lot of haze in the air when I filmed this. It was still during those Canadian wildfires, so that is why the image does look a little bit more muted, and the sun wasn't fully out, so that's why the colors don't pop as much. As far as image stability, panning the camera left to right, you can see the image and the reticle remain very sharp and very clear all the way to the point where you cannot look through it. As far as with the illumination, because prisms are technically in the second focal plane, when you do have the illumination on and you get deep into the shadows, you can very clearly see the illumination and help draw your eye back towards the center if you want to use it like that. Or if you're shooting with both eyes open in a really awkward position, you might be able to overlay the reticle and the illuminated reticle in this case with your non-shooting eye on your target and hopefully at least make a shot. It is a truly wonderful performance, and it really does add to the overall joy of using this thing. The same could be said for the 1X and the 5X, but we're not talking about those yet, are we? No, we're not. We're focusing on the 3X. Truth be told, the Eyebox on this thing is quite good, and it is good on all of Primary Arms micro prisms, whether it's the SLX or the GLX series. To show you a more dynamic approach behind this thing, you can see you could still get pretty far away from it or choke up pretty tight to it to still manage to look through it quite well. No, it's not perfect like the 1X, where you could literally use it like a red dot or a holographic sight, but considering this thing is a very small, very lightweight 3X, it performs extremely well. Another area where this thing performs quite well is in lower light environments. It's very clearly dusk, the sun has very clearly set, and the sky was overcast just to add to the overall ambiance. Going from as ambient as we can to looking through the scope, you can see there isn't that much of a brightness loss. Now, it is true in lower light environments, your pupil will dilate, and thus the exit pupil coming out of the scope might seem a little bit smaller to your eye, and you'll get this darkening effect to the image. But here, it really didn't seem to be the case, both with the camera and to the naked eye. And that is because the exit pupil on this is about 7.4 millimeter, which is quite large. Illumination, as you saw, does get way too bright in its brightest settings, but happily, you can fine-tune it to whatever you like. Let's finally break into some comparisons. First is going to be with the Trijicon TA33 ACOG. That will be on the right. On the left will clearly be the SLX3X. You can clearly tell which is which because the giant red and yellow letters on top. Some people still ask me in the comment section below, oh, which one's which? I don't know. Now you know. Image here on both of them look actually pretty good, but there's a trick. The TA33 is cropped from the beginning. Booyah! Giving these both the exact same crop, you can see the extent of the differences between these two. You could also see that there's a minor bit of fisheyeing to the SLX when we do a pan across the targets at 100 yards. As far as the comparison between these two, field of view is definitely the number that is going to be talked about first and foremost. It is the most impromptu thing. On the TA33, I mentioned it earlier, it's 19.4 feet here at 100 yards, whereas the SLX is 38 feet at 100 yards. It is basically twice as much. The price, the Trijicon is going to be about $1,000. The SLX is around that $300 price point. Again, usually $320, but you could find them much cheaper than that. As far as the eye relief, that is another number that really has to be talked about, because on the TA33 it's 1.9 inches. That's very, very small. On the SLX it's a much more common 2.7 inches, which is something that you will notice the second you get behind these two. Weight wise, they're fairly close, but it actually goes to the SLX. And exit pupil wise, believe it or not, it actually goes to the TA33. 8.4 millimeter versus 7.4 might not sound like a lot, but it is really a number that we have to talk about more on this channel, because when you get behind the TA33, you could literally dance behind it, whereas the SLX is a little bit more tight in that regard, or rather less forgiving, more tight, less forgiving, whatever, same shit. Anyway, these two are not really a direct comparison. One's a Chinese-made cheap prism, the other one is an American-made, hopefully battle optic, but I had more problems with the TA33 than I would have liked to have had. However, it is very clear to the naked eye that there is a huge difference between these two here optically, and the SLX is the one I would absolutely go for. Even though it's a Chinese-made optic as opposed to an American-made, quote-unquote, battle-ready optic, I'd much rather have the SLX. That's only because I wouldn't personally run one of these on a go-to-war battle-ready rifle for myself. I would choose a different system. But you might think otherwise. The illumination on the TA33 is way of tritium tube and fiber optic tube on top to help augment the brightness of that with ambient light, and it does work quite well, but I like the ability to fine-tune my illumination if I need it with the SLX, but again, your mileage may vary. Next up in the similar sort of magnification range is going to be the Primary Arms GLX2X. This one is a little bit different because I didn't really film this to the best of my abilities back then. I'd actually put it 1 or 2 pixels farther forward to show you how much eye relief this thing has. And as a result, the field of view looking downrange does appear a little bit smaller, as well as the view looking through it does appear a little bit smaller. However, the field of view is very similar to what we can get with the SLX. So the SLX is 38 feet, the GLX is 42 feet. Even though the GLX is only a 2X as opposed to the 3X of the SLX, it is still a pretty noticeable difference. However, the eye relief on the GLX is significantly larger. You're talking about 3.5 inches farther forward from the eye. It's almost an inch farther forward. And here, it's like an inch and a quarter plus. So that is why the image looks a lot smaller as well. The price on the GLX is going to be a little bit more expensive. It's about $370. Usually the GLX series are made in the Philippines, but if memory serves me correctly, please correct me if I am wrong, but I do believe that the 2X GLX is made in China as well. Weight-wise, it is a little bit heavier. It's also a little bit longer, but I really do feel it's the better optic of the bunch. It's got significantly more eye relief, and it's just a better optic to get behind and use in my experiences and in my opinion. Despite the fact it's only a 2X versus a 3X, the targets here at 100 yards really don't seem that much smaller. But the extra eye relief is very nice to have, as is the much larger exit pupil. On the SLX, it's 7.4 millimeter. On the GLX, it's 12 millimeter. You're talking about a 30% increase in exit pupil. That means it's going to seem bigger and brighter all the time, and you could really, really get behind this thing at extreme distances in awkward positions and still have a very good view looking through it. Please check out my review on that to find out more. But between these two, I actually really like the GLX 2X. The SLX is really good in its own right, but I prefer the 2X versus the 3X because I wouldn't want to run an offset red dot, and that's going to be the real topic of discussion in the full comparison between the SLX lineup as well as the GLX lineup coming soon. But between these two, it's going to be personal preference, really coming down to whether you want a 2X or a 3X, but there's more to it than just that extra magnification. A lot of it, again, has to do with the eye relief, the exit pupil, and what your ultimate goals are with your setup. My next option is going to be with something other than primary arms, and if you want a little bit more magnification, is going to be the Vortex SpitFire HD Gen 2 5X. As seen here, you can see we have a very similar view looking through it when we have the same crop. However, we have 2x more on the magnification. For some of you, that's going to be too much. For others, it's going to be just right, especially if you're planning on running an offset red dot. And if you do plan on running an offset red dot, the nice thing about the Vortex is it's got proprietary footprint on top for a Vortex product. So it makes life a lot easier. You do not need to run a proprietary mount off to the side. However, it's already got one built in if you so choose to use it. Mounting for offset red dots aside, what can you expect? Well, the price point on these was typically like around $400 to $500. Then Vortex sort of dropped the price on these things down to $200 for a long time, and now they fluctuate between $200, $300, and $400. And honestly, for that price, it is very, very compelling. You have a field of view of 23.3 feet, which is still significantly larger than what you get with the TA33, even though it was a 3X. The eye relief is the exact same as the SLX at 2.7 inches, and the weight is actually very close at around 10 ounces, but that's probably without a mount. Truth be told, the main difference here is going to be what magnification you are comfortable running. Both of them are very good options. My last comparison is going to be with a holographic sight and a magnifier combination, because what happens if you do not have an astigmatism and you're unsure if you want to run a fixed 3x prism with an offset red dot? Maybe you want to run a 1x or 0x red dot or holographic sight with a magnifier. Well, that is an option as well, but you're probably watching this video because you are dead set on a prism. But if you are not, let me show you what you can possibly get for an alternative. You're not going to get an EXPS 3-0 for the same price as an SLX, which is about $320. The EOTech's about twice that price, and the Holosun HM3X, which is the magnifier that we're looking through right now, is about $150 to $200. I have seen them go on sale on some retailers for about $120, which is like highway robbery. But keep in mind, they are limiting in the fact that they have a proprietary footprint. You can't just put whatever mount you want on an HM3X. You have to run what Holosun sells you. It's a decent mount, but it would be nice to have other options. As far as the HMX3X, which is what I'll probably focus on more primarily here, I already talked about the price. As far as the field of view, it's the exact same basically as the SLX3X, 37.5 feet. It's the exact same eye relief, 2.7 inches, and it's a little bit heavier. It's about 10 ounces. But the nice thing is it's got a QD mount. You pop it off, you throw it in your bag, and now you got a 1X primarily through a red dot or holographic sight again, and you could bring the 3X on whenever you would like. It's a really nice combination and something that I've been utilizing a lot more in some of my setups, and If you can get away with running a red dot or a holographic sight again due to your vision in general, it's a really good alternative. But if you can't, stick with the prism. If not, a red dot magnifier setup might be a real good alternative for you. Say what you want. I really do feel like the Primary Arms SLX and GLX series of mini prisms work great. You don't spend a lot of money to get into one of these. The most expensive option is $400, and that is regular price. On sale, you can get them for less than that, and if you buy them secondhand, even lesser than that, which is impressive. The question is, do you get what you pay for? And in my personal experience, in my professional opinion, I really do think you get what you pay for. Let's say you pay full price for this thing. It's about $320 plus tax, because unfortunately Primary Arms charges tax in most states. Let's say $350-ish bucks. Are you getting what you pay for? Well, you get really nice controls, a really nice body, really good looking glass, a bunch of different reticles, red or green illumination, and black or FDE on the outside. You really can spec these out however you like. There is some distortion to the glass, a little bit like you see here panning across 100 yards, but beyond that, there's really nothing else to fault with these. They really do work very well for their price point. Sure, there are more robust options, there are cheaper options, there are options with just different features. Yeah, of course there are. But if you are specifically looking for the SLX series of prisms, more notably the 3X as seen here, I think you're getting a pretty damn good looking prism. Now, if you don't like what this thing has to offer, there are, guess what, tons of other options for you to choose from out there in the wild. But if you are dead set on getting a 3X prism, and this is one of the ones on your list, is it worth you buying? Well, it's absolutely worth you taking into consideration. Now, no, I have not reviewed every single 3X prism on the planet. Do I plan on it? I would love to one of these days, but the likelihood of that happening anytime soon is extremely small, so don't hold your breath on that one. I do not want you blacking out or being rushed to the hospital. So take this for what it's worth. I really do feel like this is a good option, especially for the price, especially if you find them on sale, just even more so. If you are not set on the 3X, however, if you think you want a little bit more, the 5X is another good option. Or if you want to just have something that would work like a red dot or a holographic sight if you have bad eyesight, then definitely check out the 1X. I run that on my PCC and never plan on taking it off unless it breaks, in which case I'll send it to Primary Arms and get another one. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you found this review not only interesting, but entertaining. Hopefully you will be able to make a better purchase based on this video or all the other videos that I have put out, because that is the main reason for this channel, educating all of you on a better potential purchase for yourselves. So with that, a huge thank you for all of you for watching, and as always, see you again next time. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe Star subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you could still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.